Hello, everybody, and welcome into the 10th edition of the SEC show. We're in Rivalry Week. It's a long-awaited special week for the college football season, especially for my Texas Longhorns. This has been a matchup that's been set for, 2.5, 3 years now. Everyone's been waiting for it, so let's jump right into things. The first game we're going to talk about today is Tennessee versus Vanderbilt. Tyler, I'll let you speak on this first.
Yeah, coming into this season, no one really thought of Vanderbilt to be much. Let's be real here. They were originally picked to hit 2.5 wins. That was their win total from Vegas. That was, I think the FPI actually had Vandy at 3-9, so I guess they had them a little bit above the win total. But I knew Vanderbilt was going to do a little bit better than 3-9. Didn't think they would go 6-5 though. Up to this point, with that big win against Alabama, they also went to Auburn and Jordan Hare and pretty much whipped up on Auburn. They only won that game by 10, but they should have won that one by a little bit more. They also did the same thing to Kentucky. 3 SEC wins on the season. Have to give Clark Lee a lot of congrats and as well as a lot of credit there. He hit the portal really, really strong, obviously getting Diego Pavia, who is one of the rising stars of college football. It would be nice if he could come back next year, but it just won't happen, it looks like. But, yeah, so this is an interesting line, and 11 is kind of a weird number in all of sports, really. Even in basketball, 11 is a number I try to stay away from. 11 and 9, those two kind of odd numbers there. Tennessee's getting Vandy is getting 11 points at home. I tend to believe this is going to be a really close game. This is basically Vanderbilt's Super Bowl, kind of like the Alabama game, but this means a little bit more. They haven't beaten Tennessee since I do believe 2017 when Butch Jones was head coach, and that was actually his last game for Tennessee when he lost to Vanderbilt. Got actually embarrassed there. So they haven't beaten them since 2017, and this one is for the playoffs for Tennessee. I like Vanderbilt to cover here, and boy, oh boy, if Tennessee is able to lose this game, there goes their playoffs, but their program as a whole. This would affect them, I think, relatively big. But I do like what I'm seeing from Vanderbilt's defensive front these past few weeks. They played pretty well against LSU. LSU just had more talent, kind of the similar situation. Oh, by the way, they did play at LSU. But I like Vanderbilt to cover here. There's something about this Vanderbilt team that is just, you don't really want to play them because of their style of football. They run that triple option RPO, obviously, as well as they add in Stowers. If they can get him going into this game, he's really their dark horse here for Vanderbilt. I do expect their defense to show up. And in the end, though, I think Tennessee is going to find a way to get it done. But don't be surprised if Vanderbilt is able to win this game. Give me the Vols. I'm going to go 24-20 on the road at Vandy. This is probably the most underrated game of the weekend.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty excited to watch this game. I think Vanderbilt's definitely going to compete with them. And I think 7 wins would, get up to that James Franklin era, which they haven't been up to since he's left. So it's definitely a mark they want to get to. I thought like 3 or 4 weeks ago, I thought their high water mark was going to be 7 wins. So I do think they can compete and win in this football game. I will say, I think this is going to be a very low scoring football game because I do think Tennessee's defense is elite. I think it's one of the 3 to 4 best in the SEC, probably one of the 5 or 6 best in all of the country. Vanderbilt, I don't know how they're going to be able to move the ball. They really only have a couple weapons. Eli Stowers at the tight end position, obviously Diego Pavia at quarterback. It's going to be very interesting how they decide to attack this Tennessee defense. I think it's going to be similar to the Texas game. They put up 20 or 17 points in that game or something of that nature. So I think they'll be around that number in this game as well. I'm going to take Vanderbilt to cover, but I'm going to take Tennessee to win. I think Tennessee wins this game. I'm going to say 23-17, 23-16, somewhere in that nature. So that also put you in the under. I'm pretty confident in the under. This is kind of similar to a couple games that we talked about last week where we're like, yeah, we're not sure about we're not sure about which side, but we definitely feel confident in the under. I feel pretty confident in this under, but I'm going to take Vanderbilt with the plus 11 points. I think that's too many points in this game.
And I agree. It's a rivalry game. This is the last weekend was an unexpected weekend with everything going on there. Kind of an appetizer for this weekend. And with what Vanderbilt has done thus far this season, every game has been close, with really the exception to the South Carolina game. They got just physically manhandled and dominated. You got to give South Carolina a lot of credit there. I think South Carolina won 28-7. Every other game, though, for Vanderbilt, that's 4 games in which that they've lost, were by, I think, 3 points or less. They lost to Texas by 3, lost to, Georgia State, they lost by 4. Lost to Missouri by 3 in overtime. And then last week against LSU, I think they lost by, 6 or 7 points there at LSU. So, yeah, I give a lot of credit and respect towards Clark Lee and what he's able to do. But, man, yeah, Diego Pavia is going to be the key of this game. He might even be the best player on the field, which is crazy for me to even say with how talented Tennessee is. But he's going to be the difference in this game. And if he's able to get it going for Vanderbilt, as well as the passing efficiency, because this is one of the most efficient passing offenses in college football, it's going to be a long day for Tennessee.
I completely agree, and it's going to be interesting. Vanderbilt obviously loves to run the football if they're going to be able to do that versus one of the best front sevens in the whole country. Tennessee's defense is fantastic just overall. They're basically top 10 in almost every statistic. So I don't know how successful Vanderbilt's offense can be here, but I think the number for me, if Vanderbilt gets across to win the football game, is 23 points. I think if they get over that number, to me, for whatever reason, I think they win the football game. Tennessee's defense is only giving up 14 points a game, so that's going to be a tough task to get to. The next game we're going to talk about is a game that has big implications, in my opinion, on the playoff, because you have 2 teams that are vying for playoff position. Do I think either of these teams at this point will probably make it? No. But it gives you that outside shot if you win this football game. South Carolina is getting 2.5 points versus Clemson. The over-under here is 49. Tyler, what do you have to say about this football game?
Well, this isn't the most important game, but you could make a case that it is, because Texas A&M, I think both teams have a shot at the playoffs, whereas South Carolina and Clemson, the loser doesn't. The loser's pretty much out of it, unless Clemson were to get lucky with Miami losing to Syracuse. But I think the loser of this game is pretty much out of it. But this is going to be a dog fight. This is going to be a bloodbath. It's kind of weird how this is a noon game, and ESPN has their D team announcers announcing this game, which is very upset. The way that this game has been thrown onto ESPN and treated for this weekend is pretty pathetic, in my opinion. This is probably going to be a top 15 matchup. We'll find out on the rankings here, I believe, shortly. I thought it actually would be right now, but anyways, this South Carolina team is just on fire. Who's going to be able to stop them, really? If you've just been watching South Carolina since the Ole Miss game, this has been a completely different team. Even the Alabama game, they came out really I wouldn't say hot, but they came out really fierce defensively. That's just who they are. They're a really good defensive team. And Clemson, on the other hand, week 1 against Georgia, we dominated them in the second half. We just completely dominated them in the second half. Now, Clemson fans can decipher different analysis on that, as Georgia really couldn't run the ball successfully other than the outside run there. And that's why I think South Carolina is going to have to attack here on the outside with Clemson. Believe it or not, I do think South Carolina has way more athletes than Clemson. That's kind of crazy for me to even say. And as well as Lenora Sellers is playing really, really good football at the best time possible. I know it's a road game, but the last time South Carolina did travel to Clemson, they beat them. And I like South Carolina in this game. I'm going to take South Carolina to, I guess, pull the upset on the road at Clemson in a very good game. But the difference in this game, to me, it's going to be South Carolina's rush game, especially with Lenora Sellers. I do expect him to at least surpass the 60 yards rushing, which is a lot for a quarterback. But he's going to be the key to this game. Hopefully Rocket Sanders can get it going. Even if he's averaging 4 yards per carry, those are 4 tough physical yards per carry. He's one of those backs that just falls forward. And I don't really think Clemson's going to have so much success running the football with Phil Maffa, who is exceptional. probably the second best running back in the ACC, obviously to Amari and Hampton. But in the end, I do think South Carolina is going to pull the upset here. I have South Carolina going into Clemson and beating them 31-24 on Saturday. This is going to be a fun game. This is probably the best game of the weekend. I think this is actually the best matchup of the weekend. Give me the Gamecocks to ride that wave.
First off, don't speak that blasphemy. No, I'm kidding. But no, this game's going to be fun. This defensive line for South Carolina versus the offensive line of Clemson, and there's a possibility of injuries as well with Clemson on their offensive line. If that's the case, and you take in an offensive line that already wasn't that good with backups versus a defensive line that I think, like I've said for a while now, I think the front four of South Carolina is the best in the country, then I think this is going to be a huge issue for Clemson. I don't care if it's at home. Lenora, if you would have said 4 weeks ago that Lenora Sellers is playing better or a better player than Cade Klubnik, I think people would have laughed at you. But Lenora Sellers is really good right now. Like, there's an argument to be made. He's a top 10 quarterback in college football. That's how well he's playing. And the future there is bright at South Carolina. You have him. You have Nick Harbor on the outside. You have Dylan Stewart on the edge. They have a lot of young football players on both sides of the ball. Now, their defensive line, for the most part, is pretty old, and most of them will go off to the NFL. But still young guys you can build around on this football team, and a lot of to look forward to in the future for South Carolina. Yeah, I don't think South Carolina is going to get in the playoff because they lost, unfortunately, to two teams that are basically tied with them in that 9-3 range, which is Ole Miss and Alabama. You lost to both of them, and you got killed by Ole Miss at home. So I don't see any way the committee could justify putting them in over Ole Miss. Could you justify putting them in over Alabama? Yeah, I think you could, because you could say, hey, they lost on the road by 2 points. It was close enough. We think this team's better now. I actually wouldn't even have an issue with that. I'm going to take Clemson. I don't know why. I'm just going to take Clemson here. I'm going to believe in Dabo Swinney, Cade Klubnik to get the job done. I think it's going to be a really close football game. That 2.5's right on it for me. I'm going to take Clemson to win this game 31-28. So I'm going to take them to cover by half a point. This is one of those, again, I don't love it. And I'm taking the over here as well. This is a game I would stay away from if you didn't make me decide. Obviously, we do this show and we're forced to decide, so I'm going to make a pick here. I'm not going to, run away from it and say, no, I'm not going to make a pick. So I'm going to take Clemson. I'm going to take them in a very close football game. And honestly, I think the difference here is I do think Cade Klubnik with his legs will be able to make enough plays versus South Carolina. I think if he wasn't as mobile as he was, I would take South Carolina. But I think with his legs, he'll be able to do enough to score enough points versus the South Carolina defense, which is very, very good.
Yeah, and for me, I'm a little bit worried for Clemson's defense. If Clemson's defense as a whole since 2021 has just been kind of declining, and this season, again, they kind of struggle. In that loss against Louisville, they struggled with the run, and it was kind of surprising because when you think about Clemson, they're a very physical and strong up front type of team, and they gave up, I believe, almost 300 yards rushing to Louisville or something like that, 150-something yards rushing to a true freshman running back. Shout out to Coach Braum. He's a giant killer. With quotation marks going back to what he was doing at Purdue. But still, that was a big kind of shocker there. And then the Pittsburgh game, a game in which Clemson and Pittsburgh equally played terrible. If I watched that game from start to finish, and neither team blew me away. The thing that came out big was the amount of penalties Pittsburgh really gave that game away. They found a way to do it, but again, they had a backup quarterback, and I've been going back and forth with Pitt fans, and trying to enlighten how big losing Holstein was. They just don't agree with me on that. That's fine, whatever. But that was a huge loss. Having your quarterback out in that game was just big. And they gave up 350 yards passing to a backup quarterback. I believe that was his first career start. So I'm a little bit worried about this Clemson defense, and I think South Carolina can find some holes. The difference is, can Clemson basically shut down the run and make Lenora Sellers beat them through the air? I don't think so. I like South Carolina's offensive line enough, as well as these young wide receivers, maybe get them some hitch passes or something on the outside to get them involved, especially Nick Harbor. But Dalvin Campbell, he's starting to come on late. I'm forgetting who else on the South Carolina wide receiving core, but it's starting to get better. This team is getting better offensively. That's why I'm taking the over in this game as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun game to watch. I definitely think it's probably the second most entertaining game of the week, and obviously I have some personal bias there, but I'm excited to watch it. The next game up is Auburn versus Alabama. Obviously, one of the three biggest games in college football is a rivalry game. Definitely excited to watch it. When you see this line, it's pretty crazy. Auburn is only, getting 11.5 points, and I know it just happened, but 11.5 points on the road. So you're basically looking at, if this was on a neutral field, we're talking 8.5 points here between these two teams. If you would have told someone that a week ago, you would have got laughed out of the room. And then the over-under here is 52. Tyler, what do you think about this game?
Well, the Iron Bowl, the saying of, oh, you could just throw the records out of the way, and that's how good the game is. That's the Iron Bowl for you. The records just don't matter. Just forget about it. Army, Navy's another one. The biggest rivalry, to Big Ten fans is the game, Michigan versus Ohio State. However, I will say this, the records do kind of matter because when one team's bad, the other team usually blows them out. Just being honest, you're going to see that this Saturday. Michigan's 6-5, Ohio State's 10-1. Ohio State's going to beat them really bad. That's not the case with this game. Auburn and Alabama are very, very close almost every single year. It's just the difference is Auburn hasn't beaten Alabama in Tuscaloosa since Cam Newton. And boy, that game was just amazing. They were down 24-7, ended up winning that game 28-27 on the road. I'm going to give credit where credit is due. I think Peyton Thorne's actually playing his best ball right now. He had a pretty solid game against Texas A&M, had one dumb turnover. Well, actually, I think he also had a fumble. So 2 pretty dumb turnovers there. Didn't cost him the game, though. He went down and gave his team a chance to win, and then they do win that game, which was an amazing game for both teams. I know A&M lost, which was a huge loss, but Auburn may have found something, especially with this receiving core. Cam Coleman came to play, Lambert Smith as well, and then obviously Jarquez Hunter on the receiving and the rushing game. The key to this is, does Alabama just quit? Does Alabama just say, forget it, our season's over, we lost to Oklahoma, who cares? If they're on that, Auburn will win this game. This is the hardest game to predict, in my opinion. I know it's a rivalry game, but if you've been hearing these Alabama fans, they're pretty much on give-up mode. So I really can't pick this game. I'm going to go Alabama winning the game. I'm going to take Auburn to cover. Again, 11 points is a weird number. It's a number I like to stay away from if you ever bet. 11 and 9. Those are the two red flags for me. I'm going to take Alabama to win the game. I'm going to give them the credit is due. I think it's a lower scoring game, though, probably 27-20. But I got Auburn covering. But the key to this game is Alabama here to play, or are they just on give-up mode? So, and I really hope they're there to play. If Alabama plays their best ball, they win this game by 30 points. But I just don't know, especially with what I'm seeing on social media. And then, again, we saw after the Vanderbilt game, they almost lost South Carolina. So I don't know. This is the biggest I don't know game of the weekend.
Well, you said if they care, they'll win by 30. We've seen Alabama care and get beat by Oklahoma by 21 points. So they're just completely an up and down team. You don't know who shows up week to week. And like you pointed out, most of the year, that's just a Kalen DeBoer type of theme from them. And that's what made Nick Saban so special. No matter the opponent, they played to a certain level. Now, did they always play an A-plus game? No, but I think the worst I ever saw him play was like a B-plus game in like real weather. The USF game I'm going to throw out. That was in a freaking monsoon. I remember watching that game. So I'm not saying that game, but for most of his time, you saw maybe a fluctuation of a letter grade from B to an A, but that's really it. Like Kalen DeBoer from week to week, you can go from your A game to your D game to your F game. It's crazy how badly they fluctuate. And I think a lot of it has to do with matchups too. If you can stop Jalen Milroe and the QB power, QB sweep, QB counter, run game type of stuff, you can beat Alabama. If you force him in the pocket and make him purely a pocket passer, he can't do that. Now, can he throw the football? Yes, absolutely can. He's made slight progressions in that. But has he made like these world progressions where he's back there looking like Peyton Manning? Absolutely not. He's nowhere near that. I don't think he's ever going to be near that. And that's the thing too. Auburn has a pretty good team overall. You and I have talked about their record doesn't reflect how good they are. Like in reality, they're probably more like an 8-3 type of team or 7-4 type of team. And there just aren't that with the record-wise, but that's what the stats will tell you, and that's what your eyes tell you when you watch them. They're still a pretty damn good football team. They just make key mistakes in key moments. And if they're able to stop the run like they have most of the season, honestly, they did a decent job versus A&M last week. I think they can stay in this game and beat Alabama. And if they beat Alabama, we're going to see a complete collapse from Alabama. I mean, their fans are already going crazy. If you think it's bad now, lose to Auburn in back-to-back weeks, make them bowl eligible. You would have made Oklahoma and Auburn bowl eligible in the same season when they basically had no hope to become bowl eligible. So that'd be a really bad look for Kalen DeBoer. I do believe Alabama wins this football game. I think they show up enough. And I think Auburn's – listen, you've shown it to me once. You won't make the key mistake. Do it again. You haven't all year. You've done it 90% of the time. I think you're going to do it again. So I'm going to take Alabama to win this football game. I think they win the game 27-21. I think it's a close football game. So I'm going to take Auburn to cover, but I'm going to take Alabama to win, and I'm going to take the under here as well. I like the under in most of these games just because fierce rivalry games other than the South Carolina-Clemson one. Because I think, honestly, that's an obvious under, and if you're betting, never take the obvious number because, Vegas is trying to bait you into it. But I think Alabama does not cover here. I think Auburn does, and I think Alabama does win and prevents the hellscape that they would create by losing this football game. But I think it's going to be a fun football game to watch.
Yeah, and you also made the point of they gave Oklahoma and you said and potentially Auburn the bowl game. Well, they did that to Vanderbilt too, which is another funny thing too. It's going to be Vanderbilt's first time going to a bowl game since I think it was 2018 or 2017, something like that. So, yeah, but the fans are already against Kalen DeBoer. I don't know I know there's going to be a lot of people who know what I'm talking about, but on the Paul Feinbaum show, they had an Alabama call in, and oh my goodness, I think it was, I don't know if it was scripted, but it was definitely chopped up, and you could tell the audio was edited. But anyway, it was 3 minutes of an Alabama fan just ranting and telling everybody he's done with the season. He's just on to basketball. Just get him some basketball tickets, whatever. And that's what I'm worried about, though, for Alabama. And this is a big game for their future. And if Kalen DeBoer comes in and just lays an egg at home, not only you're going to hear the boo birds, but you might hear a little bit worse things coming up soon for Alabama. So, but me and you, we're going to give Alabama the benefit of the doubt because that's kind of what Alabama's program has deserved. And me and you have done this multiple times, even when they've lost. I mean, I took Alabama over Tennessee. They lost. We both took Alabama over Oklahoma last week. And in fact, I think we both took Alabama in the points. So, boy, yeah. Again, we're gonna take Alabama here, but it's mainly because of the benefit of the doubt. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think I actually did take Oklahoma, but it was by half a point. Okay. But I guaranteed the one thing I said, I was confident. I said slam the under, which I did believe hit pretty easily. Yeah. Because I was just like, I don't think either of these teams offensively are very good, honestly. And that's what I said, is slam the under, and that hit easily. But, yeah, that game was just infuriating to watch if you're an Alabama fan. But I know Oklahoma has good defense, but to score 3 points, I mean, that's pathetic. We'll move on to the next game, a game 13 years in the making. My Texas Longhorns go on the road. This game's come down from 7.5 to 5.5. The over-under here is 48.5 points as well. Obviously taking place in College Station. The last meeting, Justin Tucker, 13 years ago, hit a walk-off field goal to seal the rivalry up until this point. That time capsule will be opened up this weekend. Tyler, what do you think about this game?
Oh, yeah, this is the game I think a lot, not even just Texas and A&M fans were getting excited about, but even before the season, I think this was number one on a lot of people's list of games they were most excited to see because of this rivalry. And I get it, Texas pretty much owns A&M all time. But since I think it was 1981 or 1979, A&M has beaten Texas 17 times and lost them 16 times. So it's actually been a little bit closer over the past 30, 40 years than the all-time record. But as you said, the last time Texas and A&M played, Texas won on a field goal. The year before that, that really good Texas A&M team that went on to go 11-2. I forgot what bowl game they won. It wasn't technically – I think it was the Cotton Bowl or something like that. in which they finished the year 11-2, and that was a really fun team to watch in 2010. I like that 2010 Texas A&M team. So this is just going to be a fun game. This is a very important game for both teams. Probably the most important game of the weekend. I don't know if that's a debate, because if Texas A&M wins this game, they're in the SEC title game, and as well as they have a chance at a playoff. I think most people are expecting Texas to be in the playoff regardless of this game. But still, it's a big-time rivalry matchup. Obviously, we're hearing some things with Quinn Ewers and the injury. I think he's playing in this game. I didn't hear anything that he wouldn't. He had an MRI on his ankle. I think he's okay. I think he's going to play. The key to this game is, can Texas A&M run the football in Texas? I think they actually will. Can Marcel Reed, can he not make these a bad play here and there? And can he start to pick apart some defenses? I don't think so. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. The better defensive team is clearly Texas. They probably have the best defense in college football, by far the best secondary in college football. And Texas A&M has been struggling defensively over the past few weeks, which has kind of been weird because Mike Elko is a defensive guy. But there's just something about Texas A&M, and I get it. It's funny. It's Texas 8-4, so this would, historically, this would be the game they should lose, right, to get to 8-4. But things just haven't really been going Texas A&M's way. The South Carolina game, and then obviously this game against Auburn, they dropped the game-tying play, and they were down by 21, which is embarrassing. But I do think Texas A&M is gonna have a really strong game plan with Colin Klein. I do think they're going to try to play keep away as best as they can. They're going to be able to run the football from Ari Daniels, and hopefully they can do something with Bussey. And I'm hearing something about Reuben Owens could get some playing time too, which would be a shock. But hey, expect the unexpected in college football. I'm going to take Texas A&M here. I was going back and forth on this pick, but there's just something about this game, the importance of it. I think this is way more important for Texas A&M than it is Texas. You might disagree with that, but I do think Texas is a lock, and A&M was just focused on this game for the past few weeks. It kind of was told when Mike Elko slipped up and said he's focused on Texas. Oh, I mean Auburn. I like the Aggies here. I'm going to take them to pull the upset by a field goal, a game-winning field goal by Randy Bond, 23-20 over Texas.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty good game. I agree with you. I don't think there's any argument. If it didn't happen last week where all those teams lost, I think this would be a more important game for Texas. Yeah. But that opened it now. I just don't see a 10-2 Texas, even if with the weak schedule, getting left out of the college football playoff with all the chaos that happened. So I completely agree, because A&M now has to win this game and the SEC championship game. If they go 1-1, they're still out. So it's definitely going to be interesting. And yeah, what you said is 100% right. Like Mike Elko, you can say what you want. He 100% told the truth. Like that was his subconscious speaking. He was thinking of Texas. They played New Mexico State the week before. They've probably been preparing for Texas for like 3 or 4 weeks now. So it's definitely going to be a hard-fought game. If this game was played anywhere else, I honestly think Texas would win this game pretty easily, because I think they are a better football team. I think there's I'm trying to think of where A&M's better than Texas. Like you said, I don't think they're better secondary-wise. They're definitely not better linebacker-wise. The front four, you could argue. Offensive line, Texas has a better offensive line. Running backs, I think they're about the same. Wide receivers, Texas is better. Quarterback, if Quinn Ewers is healthy, he's better than Marcel Reed if he's healthy. That's the thing, too, is that injury scares me, because Quinn actually looked like his normal self that whole first half versus Kentucky, and then when he got hurt, he looked terrible again. So hopefully he can be healthy. If he's not, I think you're going to have to see Arch Manning in this game if you truly care about winning it, because if it's the second half version of Quinn Ewers that you got last week versus Kentucky, Arch Manning is definitely the better option. That last drive to seal the game versus Kentucky proved that. You ran the ball 15 times in a row. Think about that. 15 times in a row and scored a touchdown, which, hey, all the credit in the world, because I don't think there's very many teams in college football that can line up 15 times in a row on that defensive line and go score a touchdown. But that's not what you can do for a whole football game. But I will say the offensive line is playing much better lately for Texas. They've gotten into a groove after that Georgia game. And honestly, I think the Georgia game slightly overblown in effect for them because I think that was mostly on Quinn Ewers. He didn't play well at all in that game. Did not help them out at all with his pocket movement and mobility. But they've definitely played better since then. The running game also has gotten going. Like Trey Wisner had over 150 yards. Jaden Blue had like over 70 or 80 yards last week. The issue with them is, or especially Jaden Blue, is fumbling. They put the ball on the ground. They cannot do that in this game. Running wise, they've been fine. They were good in the Arkansas game. They were good in the A&M game. They were good in the Florida game. That's 3 weeks in a row now where they've run the ball very, very well. It's still been fumbling has been the issue. Jaden Blue has had, 3 or 4 fumbles the last 3 games. Jared Gibson has had 3 fumbles the last 3 games. The only guy that I can count on holding onto the football, knock on wood, is Trey Wisner. So hopefully we can get his productivity the same as last 3 weeks and just have him or keep him from holding onto that football. So to me, it's pretty easy here. If Quinn's healthy, I think Texas wins this game. If he's not, I have no idea. You could tell me they lose by 10 points. You could tell me they win closely. I don't think they blow him out with Arch Manning at quarterback or hurt Quinn Ewers. But I do think Quinn's going to play well. I think he's going to be shot up to all hell if he is hurt at all, and I think he'll play through it. I think Texas wins this game 29-21, so I'm taking the over here barely, and I'm going to take Texas to cover. Would not shock me if Texas A&M covers this game. Would not shock me if Texas A&M wins this game. The only thing that would shock me in this game if Texas A&M blows out Texas. I think that's really the only outcome here that would shock me. Texas blowing out A&M, I could definitely see it because if they give Quinn Ewers time and he's healthy, I think he could shred the secondary. I don't think A&M secondary is very good. Peyton Thorne was having a lot of success last week versus A&M, and he really hasn't had success versus anyone. So I am going to take Texas here, but I'm just excited to watch this game. This environment is going to be the craziest anyone walks into. I don't care. Michigan, Ohio State, Auburn, Alabama. This will be the craziest environment any football team walks into all year, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I think they were. You know how they leak the expected total for fans. Well, I'm seeing it could be 112, 113,000 fans, which I believe would be an all-time record, and that would shatter it by 3,000 or 5 or 6,000, something like that.
Yeah, at least 2,000. I think LSU may have gotten like 110 or 109 at one point.
Yeah, so this is such a big game. I'm saying I really think this is a much bigger game for Mike Elko. This was the game he circled on his schedule. Of course, the Notre Dame game. If we're talking preseason, the Notre Dame game was very important for Texas A&M, but it's not as big as Texas. Texas is your biggest rival. They're your big brother, but they're somebody who's new to the SEC as well. And if we're being honest here, Texas was struggling after A&M left the Big 12, but then Texas is starting to obviously pick it up here. And this is Texas's first true SEC road environment. I get it, the Arkansas game. Arkansas is a very underrated place to play. Don't get me wrong. But again, it was a noon game, which is kind of, it is what it is there. They played at Vandy. Okay, who cares? And then Oklahoma was a neutral site game. This game right here, this is your true SEC road environment. I don't think Texas A&M is the toughest place to play in college football, but I would definitely put it up there in the top 5. And like you said, and with what is expected as well, this environment's going to be insane. This could potentially be the biggest in college football history. That's how much is on the line for this game. And I think you made some key points there with Quinn Ewers and his health. If Texas is able to take the crowd out of this game early, I think they run away with this game. I could see it being 34-14 or something like that. The problem is, and you're going to find out, A&M fans are very annoying. They did against Alabama back when Alabama was good every single year, and they played Alabama every other year at Texas A&M. Even when it was 35-17, the fans were still in the game. If they're able to get to a point in which they're able to limit that and like I said, try to get them out of the game, I think Texas will run away with this. But it's just something about this game, something about this feeling, the aura coming out. That's why I like Texas A&M here. I think Marcel Reed's going to have to play a clean game. He's going to have to run the football as well. Amari Daniels, he's going to have to be huge. But Terry Bussey and whoever is that third option is going to have a much bigger game than what they did last week. And this is just going to be a fun game regardless. This is going to be a fun game. This was my number one game of the season in the preseason. I think this was a lot of people's preseason biggest game, or the game they were most excited for. Not biggest, but most excited for.
Yeah, it's crazy how much money is going to be spent on this game. Like just to get in is $600, and then it goes up to like $5,000 or $6,000, which is like Super Bowl ticket prices. So it's crazy, man. Like how much money. I mean, this game's probably going to generate for A&M close to $100 million. Just this game alone, which is freaking insane for one football game. That's why it's brought back I guarantee you they were definitely angry Texas came into the SEC, but once they were promised, hey, you'll get the first game, they're like, oh, well, we're going to make a shit ton of money from this. You know what? We're fine with it now. It's going to be fun. It's just going to be fun. I'm super excited, super stoked to watch it. It's been so long since this game happened. I really don't have many memories from it because I was only like 11, 12 years old. And it's not something I've, grown with my whole life, whereas Oklahoma I have. Whereas this is, I'm going to be baptized here, and then from here on out, I've already do. Like A&M fans are far more annoying than Oklahoma fans. I've said this. Just being around and talking and interacting with them on Twitter, like basically, I think Oklahoma and Texas fans have respect for each other. I don't think Texas A&M and Texas fans have much respect for each other. I think it's more of we hate each other, and we don't look at them as our little brother. We look at them as basically our son, like we're sunning them. So we'll see what happens in this game. It's going to be fun. I'm excited to watch it. Guys, can you please hit that like button? Please subscribe down below. It really helps out the channel. We could come here live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. I also do a power rankings every Monday. And then also my 5 takeaways every Sunday. So please check that out on here as well. We have a bunch of SEC content. We're going to keep it on here in the offseason as well. So please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. This has been the 10th edition of the SEC Live. That is my Twitter right there. You can find me right there on Twitter or X. And this is Tyler's Twitter or X handle. You can find him right there as well. Thank you guys for having us again. Please hit that like button and subscribe. And also, happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving.
College football is even more exciting with some action on the line. And the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, show stopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now.